You know, in an age when news outlets have let political partisanship replace fact-checking, sometimes it's hard to know what to believe in the headlines. Luckily, here to help us and help us really sort all this stuff out is a real news reporter. One of the best, in my opinion. In fact, he's a colleague from Fox News. I want you to welcome my friend Kelly Wright. Kelly, great to have you here.
See you, my friend.
We are living in a time where we hear all this stuff about fake news. Pat Caddell and I were talking earlier about the media. This is the first time in my life I've ever seen the media wanting to put a lid on information rather than take the lid off. What is happening in journalism?
I would have to say that right now everyone's being affected by partisanship on all sides. You have partisanship on the left, partisanship on the right. And as journalists, we have forgotten one of the most fundamental things that we should have, and that's objectivity. To be fair, to be balanced, to be accurate, to fact check our sources. Because you can't just go by anonymous sources anymore, because those anonymous sources don't amount to a hill of beans if there's no veracity to their story. And then you, as a reporter, you tend to lose the credibility that you were seeking.
When people give these unnamed sources, does it not discredit the authenticity of the story a lot of the time?
I think it does, because if you're basing everything on high sources or anonymous sources or on the condition, under the condition of anonymity, I think what happens is you lose the ability to convey to the people who are reading that story or watching that story or listening to that story through any online component or even radio. What you're doing, you're failing the people that you're trying to report to, because those people have no way of checking the sources. And as a reporter, I would want to say, this person said it, I'm attributing the story to that person because of the fact that they've given me the information. Now, I understand that sometimes you have to protect sources for investigative pieces and stories that are really sensitive, and because you're digging deep into that story, there are people close to it, and they want to protect themselves so they can continue to give you more information. That's different. There are differences. But this whole fake news thing that people are talking about, a lot of it's based on those anonymous sources that were giving out erroneous reports.
Journalism is important. The First Amendment is critical. We cannot survive as a republic without having an honest press that tells us what's happening, that exposes government corruption, that gives us the light, if you will. What are we losing by having a media that often becomes part of the story?
Well, you're talking about advocacy journalism to some degree, and I see where advocacy journalism can help some people, but it can also be a hindrance to our society. We live in a free society. We have a freedom of the press, and we want to be able to tell people what's really going on. If you have to look through a lens, for example, some news outlets that report from the left, some news outlets are accused of reporting from the right. Where's the middle? I believe that as I grew up, my Journalism 101 course was that report the facts and let the facts speak and fall where they may. The American people are intelligent enough and analytical enough to be able to decide for themselves.
But it seems like that sometimes the goal is not to be right, it's just to be first. How big of a challenge is that for everybody in the news business today?
Well, it is a challenge. What we do at Fox, when we see things that are breaking, the immediate goal is to make sure that it's confirmed. Always confirm the facts. When there's breaking news taking place, you want to jump the gun and be first. But we have to hold back and make sure that we check those facts. Other people could be reporting it. But at Fox, what we're trying to do, we're trying to nail it down, draw it down so that we can get to the source of that story and say, based on our own independent confirmation, we can confirm that this story is going on. So you want to get the facts right. You want to get the truth.
On a percentage basis, how much of the news today do you think may be tainted by the attitude of the journalist who's reporting it?
Well, that's a very good question. I think the attitude of a lot of journalists today is, in their own frame of thinking, they want to be right, but I don't know what their worldview is. See, that has a lot to do with it too. What's the make of that individual reporting that story? Is their worldview tied to their political DNA? It's almost like when I explain to people in a church setting, is your faith based on your political DNA or on your Christ-centered DNA? Because there is a difference.
Yeah.
You know, you can read the Bible and still think left. You can read the Bible and still think right. But in between is God's word, and he's right. So everything else fails in comparison.
That's a great way to look at it. And you know, I don't think journalists should be devoid of a point of view, but when they report something to me as news, not editorial.
That view should not enter in.
You know,
you don't editorialize, you report.
There was a reporter who covered me for a number of years in Arkansas, and I'll never forget, in all the years that he covered me, I, to this day, have no idea whether he likes me or not. And I've said, this is a great reporter.
That's a great reporter.
He's a great reporter, because if he wrote something negative, frankly, I deserved it. I'd said or done something stupid, and he called me out on it. But it wasn't unfair, it was factual. And if I did something that probably was fairly good, it was reported that way. But I didn't know what his personal opinion was. I always said, that's great journalism.
Yeah, well, it is. You know, I've had people who have been guests on the shows that I've anchored, and if I know them, I'm honest enough to say, in full disclosure, this is someone that I know.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to say, oh, Kelly gave them a, he asked soft questions because he knows them. I want people to know, I know this individual, and I want to be able to ask that individual fair questions, balanced questions, and to be able to have the integrity to talk to that individual as I would ask anyone else a question.
Well, Kelly, you've always been fair. I think you're a great reporter and a great person and a great friend. He's not only an expert on differentiating real news from fake news. Here's something you may not know. He is a real singing talent. Someone who talks about the news and also plays music. I mean, what are the odds of that? So he's going to be performing the song, What's Your Thing? And whether he likes it or not, I'm going to be playing with him on bass. So if I could just have our security guards lock all the doors, because we want our audience to stick around for the rest of the show.